You didn't recognize me without it, did you? Speaking my truth, Shauna covered in blood and on top of another woman, it did things to me. And yes, those things were homosexual. I mean, the parallels to lesbian arts and crafts in that scene, mwah. We'll get more into that later. I do believe that Misty and her glasses may be the true romance of this show. I love that freaky four-eyed little mushroom so much. This episode, oh my gosh, the clues and the connections are unhinged. We have a lot to discuss, so you better strap in. Let's go. Hi guys, welcome to a video, and in today's video, we're just going to be discussing thoughts and theories on episode 8 of Yellowjackets Season 3. As always, there will be spoilers in this video. I feel like I may have spoiled some things already in the introduction, but hey, either way, you have been warned. So I'm going to start with the biggest talking point of this episode, adult Melissa. Now, I can only really speak for myself, but her reveal was not exactly a shocking surprise. It's been speculated that Hilary Swank was playing her ever since the season 3 trailer dropped, and the hints have been hinting all throughout this season too. Now, points of interest. When Shauna is first sneaking around Melissa's house, I noticed what looks to be moths in this picture frame. And I could be wrong, they may be butterflies, but if I am right, and they are moths, this could be a suggestion that the moths that we see in this episode are connected to Melissa and Shauna's storyline. For example, the moths first make an appearance in Shauna's dream when she's asleep outside Melissa's house. Next, as just discussed, we see what looks like it could be moths inside a picture frame in Melissa's house. And lastly, teen Shauna sees the moths when Melissa is talking to her. Now, moths symbolize a number of things: death, transformation, the supernatural, and the type of moths that Shauna is seeing are death's head hawk moths, which famously have a connection to Silence of the Lambs, and therefore cannibalism may be relevant to this episode. And there are many other interpretations of Shauna seeing these moths. Let me know your own interpretations of the moths down in the comments. It's always really interesting to read different people's interpretations. And interestingly, I've seen some people say that they think that the moths are a warning sign of sorts, and that they may represent the group, following Cody as a guiding light, which could lead to their deaths, which is a very cool interpretation. It makes total sense with the girls' associations to flying bugs. But one possible interpretation of the moths that I formed is that they are symbolic of how Melissa and Shauna are drawn to each other like moths to a flame, which is a very dangerous thing. Moths often represent the pursuit of something desirable, even if it leads to their own destruction. And that kind of seems like it tracks with these two, especially after this episode. Now, interestingly, when Shauna hears Melissa call Alex her wife, we can see that she has a physical reaction to it. And this could be to do with the fact that she thinks it's disgraceful that Melissa would marry Alex, considering what they did to her mother. Or it could be because she doesn't like that Melissa is committed to another woman who isn't her. Not necessarily because she's still in love with Melissa, but because she's no longer the center of Melissa's universe. It's a hit to the old Shauna ego. When Shauna steps out of the closet, yes, out of a closet. I don't think there's any symbolism in that. Shauna and Melissa start to get into it, and we learn that Melissa faked her own death and changed her name to Callie, which confirms the Princess Bride theories and Wesley-Melissa parallels we have been discussing for previous episodes. And this is important because now we know this theory is confirmed, it may give us even more clues about Melissa and Shauna's storyline. For example, one thing that's now on the table is Melissa getting ambushed or kidnapped, tortured, and then once again being presumed dead. Or maybe she's able to save herself with her own wit. I love the Princess Bride theory, but it's also kind of terrifying. It's gonna be crazy. Anyway, coming back to this episode, Shauna asks Melissa, "Are you still in love with me?" in relation to Melissa leaving the tape for her, and Melissa responds with, "I'm not. I mean, honestly, I never was." And she then explains that she faked her death because, and I quote, "After we made it back, I was no longer one of you, and you scared the absolute sugar out of me. Now, it's hard to make commentary on the nature of Shauna and Melissa's relationship because we've only been shown glimpses of it in the teen timeline. And whilst it's a relationship that certainly revolves around power dynamics, manipulation, and unresolved trauma, in my opinion, there was also obviously very real feelings there between them. We see this through their emotional acting and the visual storytelling. So I don't believe that Melissa never had feelings for Shauna, and I don't believe that Shauna never had feelings for Melissa either. But I can understand why Melissa would fake her own death to get away from Shauna and the rest of the group, considering what they are capable of. If we go back to season 1, adult Travis did much of the same, minus the fake death. So I don't find Melissa's story all that unbelievable. However, I certainly think there's more to it than she's sharing. Now, there are 2 points of interest about this conversation between Melissa and Shauna. Firstly, it's a battle of wits. And it's connected to the poison cup scene in The Princess Bride, where Wesley and Vizzini try to outsmart each other. They have a lot of back and forth with accusations of lying, which parallels the type of conversation Shauna and Melissa are having. And this parallel is complemented by Melissa bringing over 2 glasses of water. And secondly, this conversation is further proof that Melissa and Shauna are birds of a feather. We have previously been shown this through visual storytelling and symbolism. For example, in the Coach Ben execution scene, the only 2 people to look directly at Ben were Shauna and Melissa. Everyone else in that scene looked away, and this tells us that there's a similarity of character between them. Both of them also gain enjoyment from hurting other people, or seeing other people be hurt. We see this with Melissa enjoying cutting Ben's Achilles tendon, and Shauna smiling when Edwin gets axed. And alongside this, there's the visual suggestion that they fit together like a knife fits a sheath. So all of that combined with the Wesley and Melissa Princess Bride parallels, with Wesley being a man who will do anything for the woman he loves, suggests to me that Melissa and Shauna are this incredibly perfect messed up match. Now, we know that they're probably not going to have some fairy tale ending, considering that nothing in this show ends well, but all signs are pointing to these 2 being very similar characters who are meant for each other, which seems odd considering what's going on with their storylines in both the teen and adult timelines currently. Furthermore, we can see a penguin on Melissa's hat in this scene, and I believe this penguin is related to some kind of sports team. The Pittsburgh Penguins, perhaps. I may be wrong about this, so if anybody knows anything about this logo, please do leave it in the comments. And interestingly, penguins are a symbol of faith, fidelity, and devotion, as they are known for their monogamous ways and choosing lifelong mates. Some penguins also live in brutal conditions and can come up against some seriously aggressive adversaries. So it's notable that the image of a penguin is sat between Shauna and Melissa here, as it possibly suggests Melissa's lifelong devotion to Shauna, not her wife, and that has an impact on possible theories. A lot of us, including me, thought that Melissa was out to get revenge on Shauna for something that she did to her after they were rescued. But what if Melissa is trying to win Shauna back or protect her in some way? Again, this seems a little confusing given that, according to Melissa, she faked her death to get away from Shauna, but I feel like there's a lot we don't know and it's a possibility nonetheless. Also, I think Melissa sending Shauna that tape in order to get her attention is a lot more believable than her claims, and I quote, "Barbara said I was holding on to something. If I wanted to be free, I had to let it go. So I left you the tape so you could try and do the same." Melissa knows Shauna incredibly well, so in my opinion, she must have known that by sending Shauna that tape, that she was sending her an invitation. As a side note, I think that the Barbara that Melissa mentions here may be Walter, and I honestly think this because the first thing I thought of when I heard that name was Barbara Walters. You can unsubscribe, it's okay. This is officially my silliest theory. Melissa also mentions that the explanation for the tape was in the note that she left with it. But of course, Shauna doesn't have that note. Callie does. And so obviously Shauna doesn't buy Melissa's story, but I feel like even if Shauna had the note, she still wouldn't buy it. Because Melissa's story, it just doesn't make much sense. Melissa was so scared of Shauna that she faked her own death to get away from her. And all these years later, in order to stop feeling troubled, she leaves incriminating evidence on her doorstep in order to help the both of them get over it. The math is not mathing. Now, I think the real answer as to why Melissa sent that tape maybe in this conversation where Melissa refers to her life as normal and boring. Because she says that's what she wants, but I don't think it is. And I think she's lying to both herself and Shauna here about her motivations. Melissa also mentions the recentish events with the women going to Lottie's intentional community, which does offer an explanation for the timing and why Melissa was suddenly triggered into reaching out. But even still, there's definitely more to the story. Another thing I found odd was Melissa's claims that she saved the tape in case any of the remaining Yellowjackets came after her. And I thought this was odd because surely after faking her death, she would want to have a completely clean slate. And holding on to a piece of evidence that incriminates not only herself but other people and could blow up her life is a questionable move. And Shauna even asks Melissa, "Why would we come looking for you?" So I believe that Melissa kept the tape either for manipulation purposes or because, like the other surviving Yellowjackets, she is not able to fully let go of the past or her destructive tendencies. Shauna also says, the only way to truly be safe, to be 100% certain that nobody is going to spill your darkest secrets, is to be the only one left. And I thought this was interesting because it could be a clue or foreshadowing that Shauna is going to be the last woman standing by the end of the show. Now, as discussed earlier, Shauna and Melissa are birds of a feather. And this conversation between them almost acts as a mirror. Firstly, Shauna points out that Melissa's normal, boring life is a sham. She says, "This isn't normal, it's a lie. The only reason you can pretend it's normal is because you aren't you. You don't have a normal life. You don't get to have a normal life." And it's notable that Shauna starts getting upset here because A, it says something about her own life, and B, it suggests that she begrudges Melissa's happiness because she herself is not happy. And of course, Shauna is right. You know, there's nothing normal about Melissa's life and she is living out a lie. Melissa then throws it right back at Shauna and responds with, "You say I'm living a lie. Does she, Callie, know what you did? What you're capable of?" And when Shauna says she does, Melissa then asks her, "And she still loves you?" To which Shauna replies again that she does. And Melissa responds with, "Who's lying now?" And this is Melissa pointing out to Shauna that Shauna's own family dynamics are also based upon deception. Melissa then tells Shauna, "You stir the pot just to feel alive. You stew and you seethe and you make it everyone else's problem because you hate to be alone. You hate yourself and you want everyone else to feel just as miserable as you are." And this is a pretty accurate read. Melissa just really lays Shauna's shit bare here. But the point is, these two family women are both living a lie. And this conversation serves as a mirror between the two. Melissa also tells Shauna, "You came here because you want your life to explode." Which, again, going back to the mirror aspect, you could interpret as Melissa bringing Shauna back into her life because she also wants her life to explode. And this connects to the exploding moth light in Shauna's dream and the theory that Shauna and Melissa are like two moths drawn to a flame. Shauna is drawn to Melissa and vice versa because of the danger they represent. They're like moths to a flame and it's going to end badly. We know this. It's also a potential clue that there may be an actual explosion in these last two episodes, which links back to my crazy tinfoil hat theory that Misty is going to have to jump out of a window because of some kind of explosion, Bruce Willis style. That's one of my more unserious theories, but if it comes true, I am going to buy myself a Sherlock hat. Now, moving on to the end scene where Shauna bites a chunk of flesh out of Melissa's arm. We've all been there. Wait, what? Funnily enough, this scene took me back to Shauna dominating Jeff in season 1 after she killed the rabbit, where we got a glimpse of the violent and dominant tendencies she has lurking beneath. So Shauna letting everything go in this scene with Melissa is very significant, because from season 1 we have been waiting for the Shauna pot to boil over. Shauna's repression and mundane life has been a theme in this show since the very first episode of season 1, where everyone from Callie to Jessica Roberts was making remarks about it. And for all this time, Shauna has been keeping the tiger in the cage and living out this quiet homemaker facade. And now with Melissa back in her proximity, she's finally letting it all out. The dam has finally broken. Also, knowing how much Melissa and Shauna get off on hurting other people and asserting power over other people, this scene very much comes across like foreplay. Their relationship is very intertwined with violence and quite heavily visually connected to a knife and sheath, which not only highlights the violent aspect of their relationship, but also has very sexual connotations. In fact, there's quite a lot of sapphic sexual parallels in this scene, with Shauna on top of Melissa pinning her down and with her mouth and chin covered in blood. I mean, I know a good time when I see one. And interestingly, this scene also relates back to Shauna biting Mari, with Mari being the one to call her a gaywad, and Shauna telling Mari to eat the spilled food, which creates a circular theme, and this could be relevant considering the finale for season 3 is titled Full Circle. What else is going to mirror or connect back to previous events this season or previous seasons? Moving on to adult Shauna's grocery store dream. That sounds like a Nintendo game. Okay, so Shauna is scanning meat products when she notices that Jackie is the customer, and Jackie starts talking about how Shauna's life did not pan out and that there's so much wasted potential with her, which of course reflects Shauna's own regrets, self-perception and insecurities about what her life has become, which is very relevant to her scenes with Melissa. And Jackie also calls her shipman, which causes Shauna to snap and tell Jackie that she hates being called that. And what's interesting about this is Jackie asks Shauna why she never told her she hated it, and this really ties into the core issue of their whole relationship, where Shauna never spoke up about the way that Jackie treated her. She would always just store things up, be resentful, and then take it out on Jackie in other ways. Shauna looking down and seeing the packaged meat mixed in with human parts and hot chocolate of course relates to Jackie's death, but it's also a reflection of how normalized butchering and eating people as though they were livestock became in the wilderness. I think this dream is interesting because in a lot of ways Jackie is what shaped Shauna's life to be what it is in the adult timeline. And there's multiple ways to interpret this dream. I'd love to know what other people think of it. Leave your interpretations down in the comments. But to me, I feel like a lot of this dream reflects that Shauna's relationship with Jeff from affair to marriage, Shauna's life from adolescent to adult, is always tethered to Jackie in some way. Interestingly, Jackie also tells Shauna that she killed her, which, since this is Shauna's subconscious, portrays how Shauna still blames herself for Jackie's death and is always carrying around that guilt. All of Shauna's roads, they just lead back to Jackie. Another point of interest in this dream is after seeing the moths fly into the light, Jackie says, "They're drawn to the light. Should have known better, don't you think?" And of course, what she's saying is that these moths are drawn to their own destruction by following their desire without a second thought. And since this is Shauna's dream, I interpreted this as commentary on Shauna's character. I think a part of Shauna knows deep down that the moves that she's making are not leading to anywhere good, but she just can't help it. Her desire is just too strong. But let me know your thoughts on this down in the comments, because, you know, there are multiple interpretations. On the topic of Jackie haunting Shauna, another point point of interest about this episode is if Melissa faked her own death after the rescue to get away from the others, but the others didn't actually do anything to her to cause this, then who was the person Ghost Jackie was referring to in the freezer scene where she said that Shauna did something to someone when she got back and that person is trying to hurt her? Because from what Melissa has said, it doesn't sound like Shauna did something to her when they got back. So who could this person be? Was it someone related to one of the survivors, or is there another survivor we don't know about? Moving on to Teen Shauna and Melissa. As we suspected last episode, Melissa is annoyed that Shauna didn't show any concern for her after she was wounded. And this ties into what I was talking about earlier, where it's my perception that Melissa does have feelings for Shauna, because if Melissa didn't care about Shauna and their relationship, she wouldn't be treating her in this way. She would have just continued sucking up to her like a lowly sidekick. And Shauna explains things from her side and tries to spin her running off as though she was being valiant and wanting to get the guy who wounded her girl. To which Melissa accuses her of lying, which mirrors their conversation in the adult timeline. And then Shauna tells Melissa she can believe what she wants, but she still hasn't ruled out killing Cody for hurting her, which brings Melissa around. And again, I feel as though if Shauna truly didn't care about Melissa, she wouldn't have even taken the time to try and bring her back around. She would have simply shrugged it off and let her go. Now, granted, Shauna is a complicated character and she could have easily been lying to Melissa for the sake of holding on to her loyalty and admiration, especially since it feeds something within her. But it could also just be that Shauna was explaining to Melissa that she shows care and concern in other ways, violent ways. And a point of interest in this conversation is that it may offer a clue that Shauna is going to be the one to kill Cody, especially since in the promo for episode 9 we can see that Shauna gets the gun. It could even be the case that Cody's death may end up being a token of Shauna's love for Melissa. Now, this may sound like a bit of a reach considering the current circumstances, but I wanted to mention it just in case it does end up being relevant. Interestingly, in this scene, Melissa also hands Shauna the sheath she made her and asks if she's going to take it back home with her. Now, this suggests that Shauna had forgotten to pack the sheath, possibly because she's a clueless boyfriend type, or possibly because it's of such little importance to her that she didn't want to take it with her. And this, of course, reflects of how little importance Melissa is to her. And once again, this makes it hard to understand her behavior in this scene. Does she care for Melissa or doesn't she? And then we see the scene shift from Shauna seeing the moths and holding the sheath with shaking hands to adult Shauna rubbing her hands anxiously in front of Melissa with the knife. So there are a lot of visual parallels and connections between these two scenes, which suggests there's something about Melissa and their connection that makes Shauna anxious. And that is a very interesting concept, because their relationship began with Shauna very much not caring and holding all the cards. So, what's changed? So, where are Shauna and Melissa headed? What does all of this suggest? Well, it's hard to say because of the convoluted nature of their relationship in the teen timeline. But my take is, I suspect that either this season or next, both Shauna and Melissa's marriages are going to fall apart. I think Melissa is just as unhinged and dangerous as Shauna, and I suspect that Shauna will try and kill Melissa, but Melissa may save herself by seducing Shauna again, which circles back to episode 2 of this season, and their entanglement will end up in some very serious destruction. I also think there's a strong possibility that Melissa gets kidnapped or ambushed and taken to be tortured Princess Bride style, and I feel that Melissa may either save herself by her own wits, or Walter may step in to save her, because of course it's heavily theorized that these two have a connection. It wouldn't surprise me if the season ended on a cliffhanger where we think Melissa is dead, but she's not. Now, I could be way off the mark. We've seen so little of Melissa and Shauna's relationship. It's hard to get a feel for what's truly going on between them. I mean, it's clear it won't end well, but it's less clear what the true nature of their relationship is and how that's going to impact their storyline. The storyline of two characters who deep down still want each other or have a unique connection or attraction looks very different to a storyline where you have two characters who do not care about each other and are operating from a more clinical standpoint. Let me know what you think on all things Shauna and Melissa in the comments. Oh, I know people have some strong opinions about these two. This should be fun. Moving on to Jeff and Callie. Now, in my opinion, after watching this episode, it's very clear to me that both of these characters are hiding something. I feel that there's going to be some twists and reveals related to one or both of them. Callie has purposefully withheld the tape note from Shauna for a reason, and she has been referred to as a schemer by Misty this season. It's possible that Callie may be gathering evidence to set Shauna up. It's possible she may try and offer an ultimatum to Shauna. She may want revenge on her for being sidelined. She may be planning something to try and impress her. It could be anything. It's also possible that Callie has been in contact with other people behind the scenes too. Jeff also certainly knows more than he's letting on. He's clearly incredibly stressed, and when Callie says, "I don't think anyone is after Mum," he says, "I don't either," and then quickly adds, "Why do you say that?" As though he's panicked that Callie may know something that he knows. Now, we know the reason that Callie thinks this is because she has the note. So, does that mean that Jeff is withholding a piece of information too? Jeff and Misty also have a back and forth on the phone, with both sides batting questions to each other instead of answering them, which, as a side note, is visually paralleled by the tennis match that's taking place on TV in this scene. And this suggests that Jeff is being evasive to protect his wife. So what else could he have done to protect her? There is also a visible scratch on Jeff's hand, and interestingly, it mirrors the scratch on the wall from the location of Lottie's death. And this could be a clue that Jeff is a possible suspect, or he is involved in Lottie's death in some way. Jeff has the very obvious motive of not wanting Lottie to drag his family back into any dangerous shenanigans. Jeff being the culprit also circles back to season 1, where he was the one behind the blackmailing situation. And I noticed that the finale for season 3 is titled Full Circle. So it's not a totally crazy theory that something may lead back to Jeff. As for what happens next with Jeff and Callie, my best guess is that Shauna returns home and shit gets real. Shauna now knows about the note Callie was hiding, and either she finds it or Callie reveals it. And after what Shauna's done to Melissa, this won't be a good thing. And as I said earlier, Callie may attempt to manipulate Shauna or something similar, and as a result, Shauna may hurt Callie. And this may lead to Jeff leaving her over it. Another possible theory is that if Jeff is indeed responsible for something, Shauna may discover this and leave him over it. Either way, I think Shauna is going to find herself alone by the end of the season, and Misty is going to be the only person she can turn to, which connects back to the Thelma and Louise theory. But let me know your thoughts on Jeff and Callie down in the comments, because I'm interested in reading other people's theories. Admittedly, these two have not been on my radar as much as the other characters this season, so I may have missed something. Moving on to the teen timeline. The group are preparing to leave the camp and follow Cody in the hopes of rescue. But Lottie declares that she doesn't want to return home and says, "We can't go back, we don't belong there anymore." And I interpreted this as being related to the fact that they fully embraced a primal part of themselves that they're going to be unable to put back in the box, and they've done unforgivable things, which is forever going to separate them mentally and emotionally from civilization and who they once were. And then Lottie says, "If I go back, I won't be well. I won't be me. The me that was made out here. We're safer here." Now, Lottie suffers from mental health issues, and considering we know the treatment that awaits her upon her return, and the poor relationship she has with her father, it's understandable that from her perspective, she feels safer out in the wilderness, where she's not being ignored, dismissed, restrained, or treated against her will. In her mind, in the wilderness, she's able to fully embrace who she thinks she really is. Shauna also refuses to leave the camp and says to Lottie, "I'm staying too. I'm not staying because of you, it. Something just doesn't feel right. Now, we know that Shauna was adamant about disposing of the witnesses, and so her distrust of the outsiders likely plays into her decision. But I also think there's an element of Shauna not wanting to let go of the power she has obtained in the wilderness. Back home, Shauna was looked down upon and felt invisible. And in the wilderness, she feels seen and she's somebody people look up to. So, similar to Lottie, it's understandable why Shauna would want to stay. And then we have Tai, who also refuses to leave the camp. And she says, whatever they have been feeling, I've been feeling too since those two arrived. Something doesn't feel right. Now, earlier on in the episode, Tai expresses to Van that she's anxious about returning to a homophobic society, and she doesn't want to deal with the stress of carrying all of their secrets from the wilderness and worrying about potential consequences for their actions back home. So, like Lottie and Shauna, Tai has understandable reasons for not wanting to leave the camp. As for the bad feeling the girls have, it could be related to paranoia or superstition, but it could also relate to female intuition about Cody, especially since he was suggested as being a shady character, and it's possible that the girls sensed he was planning to lead them to harm in some way. This may even be confirmed later on at some point. The other glaring issue is Cody and Hannah are witnesses to the group's crimes, so they're not exactly being rescued under ideal circumstances anyway, which understandably creates a lot of doubt and hesitation. There's also a possibility that it may start snowing soon, especially given Van's comment about it getting colder already. And if it did snow, this would make their 6-day journey to rescue very dangerous. Now, we know from the episode 9 promo that Shauna obtains a gun, and the 3 people who want to stay at the camp are people who have influence over other members of the group. Aquila is still having visions, which may bring her back under Lottie's sway. Van is in love with Tai. Melissa, it's less clear whether she'd choose Shauna in this moment, but either way, it's looking as though there's going to be a split in the group over the rescue situation, especially with Nat and Travis being very vocal about wanting to leave, and I'm sure other group members who are desperate to leave and find rescue no matter the price they have to pay. And this could lead to a number of possibilities. People may either flee the camp individually or as a group. They may also attempt to free Cody so he can guide them, and this may backfire on them with Cody turning on them or them being hunted or killed off by the other group. Another possibility is that if it snows or if Cody turns on them, the members of the group who wanted to leave may end up regarding Shauna, Lottie and Tai as sound advisors and fall back into following them. It's also interesting that it's 3 girls who are refusing to leave the camp, as this again ties into the theme of 3 this season, which we discussed last episode too. And the theme of 3 has religious connotations with the Holy Trinity. It has connections to storytelling and life itself, with a beginning, a middle and an end. And in witchcraft and folklore, the number 3 is often associated with power, ritual and the invocation of magic. There's also the 3 weird sisters speaking prophecies from Macbeth, which connects to Shauna's Shakespearean theme this season. There's the 3 fates from Greek mythology, which connects to Lottie and the general Greek mythology theme of the show. As it stands, there are multiple ways to interpret this theme of 3. I would love to know if anyone has any other ideas as to what this theme could be about. Moving on to Aquila's dead flora and fauna visions. Now, with everything that's happening, Aquila's vision could be interpreted in multiple ways. We know that winter is on its way from Van's comments about it getting colder. It could represent Aquila's anxiety of the animals dying if she abandons them. Dead animals can also represent that something is coming to an end and a new chapter is on its way, which tracks with the changing group dynamics. And it could also be a clue that there's about to be a lot of death in the group, possibly, as we've just discussed, caused by the split or by Cody. As a side note here, there's been a lot of speculation that Aquila may die this season, including from myself, but I now suspect there may be some kind of twist coming. I just don't know what. There's been a fair bit of focus on Aquila's character this season, and it's clearly for a reason. Either they are letting us get attached to her because, you know, sometimes they like to do that before killing someone off, but it could also be for another reason. If anybody has any theories about Aquila, please leave them in the comments. I'm wondering if her visions somehow may maybe end up saving her life. Interesting. And finally, moving on to Tai and Van. Now, there's not too much more to discuss about them this episode that hasn't already been covered in the last episode. As for this episode, it's confirmed that Van is dying and there's nothing more the hospital can do for her, and Tai is desperate to buy her more time. All of this leads to Tai almost killing a man in the palliative care unit. However, she isn't quite able to go through with it, although he does die anyway. Does that count? We'll have to wait and see what kind of state Van is in next episode to see if it did. And then we see Tai returning to Van, where we discover that other Tai has now locked normal Tai out completely. So the implication here is that other Tai is now firmly in the driver's seat. It hasn't been confirmed that other Tai has solely been in the driver's seat for all of this season so far, especially since we've seen Tai putting up a struggle against her. But from this point on, we now know for sure that it's just her. And in the teen timeline, Tai and Van have a discussion where Tai expresses that she doesn't want to leave the wilderness. And we know this is because she doesn't want to return to a homophobic society where she could possibly lose Van. And the no-eyed man appears, which suggests that other Tai has been triggered and is concocting dark ideas about how to keep Van with her. So there's a parallel between teen and adult Tai in this episode, where other Tai is triggered around the thought of losing Van. And it highlights how other Tai is the one that is devoted to Van at all costs. Interestingly, if we go back to season 1, Tai makes a comment in episode 8 where she tells Shauna at their sleepover that with Simone she doesn't feel it, but she feels stable and safe. She then goes on to say that it wasn't any good for her, and if someone made her feel it wasn't going to be good for anybody, which of course relates to what's happening now and could be a clue that Tai is about to go rogue and her actions will have consequences for everyone, not just herself and Van. I still have a lot of questions about other Tai, but I do appreciate that her and the no-eyed man are supposed to be somewhat of a mysterious mind and the ambiguity around them is a part of that. And perhaps we will have some more answers about other Tai in the next couple of episodes. But in any case, as I've said before, it's clear to me that some really dark shit is about to go down in Tai and Van's storyline. Once again, all I have to say is strap in. Okay guys, let me know your thoughts and theories on episode 8 down in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe for instant disappointment, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.